The Kite Runner analysis. The Kite Runner begins with a young boy named Amir, who's Pashtun, and his best friend Hassan, who's a Hazara. The social statuses of the two conflict and are always in the back of their minds when they're interacting. When Amir's best friend Hassan gets raped, we learn a little bit about Amir and who he is when he does nothing about it, but he just watches. It changes everything for Amir, and he holds the guilt throughout his whole life. When Amir finally starts his own life after he moves to America with his dad, he also meets his wife Soraya. He then goes back to Afghanistan in search for a little boy named Sarab. He finds him and finds out that he is actually Hassan's son. He takes Hassan back to America to live with him and his wife Soraya in California. After, of course, he meets with Asif, Hassan's attacker and the one who raped him, and they get in a fight and he's able to get Sarab back. Imagery. This use of imagery when Amir is describing Soraya shows about the detail that Amir notices when seeing his future wife. He notices little things about her, and it is clear that they already have some sort of connection. Symbolism. The symbol of the lamb was used to represent Hassan when he was being raped by Asif, and Amir did nothing but watch. It shows the loss of innocence within Hassan after he accepts what's happening to him, and he knows that there's nothing that can be done. Detail. The selection of detail that the author includes in this certain scene shows us the effects of how distraught and emotional people are about leaving their hometown and going somewhere new. When Kamal's father knows that his son isn't breathing anymore, it's more than he can take, and then he does what he does. Also, Amir being in the middle of this shows just how much it impacted him being able to see this and witness it firsthand. Foreshadowing. When Asif says, "Someday I'll make you face me one on one," at this point in the story, we are unsure of what he's talking about. When Asif finally comes back, we hardly know it's Asif until after it is discovered when Amir and him meet. Asif remembers Amir, and we know what he was talking about at that point. They end up fighting, and it is foreshadowing because before he mentions that he's going to face him one on one. Text to self connection. The reason this is text to self connection is because guilt can be related to any person's life. Everyone has felt guilt, whether it be for, or it may not be for watching your best friend get raped and not do anything about it, but even if it is something we all can experience and relate to guilt, having that weight on your shoulder and not being able to do anything about it is very, um, it's something that we all have to be able to deal with. Also, the connection comes because guilt is a human emotion that we all experience. So when Amir is experiencing it, we can relate to him. Text to world. In Afghanistan, social status is very relevant. It's important that we are familiar with what's going on in Afghanistan because it helps us get a better understanding of the country and the people that live there. Their culture has a lot to do with them, and what their culture is says a lot about what their actions are and who they are interacting with. We also need to understand Afghanistan because we will be able to know a little bit more about them and be less subject to judging them or just not being able to understand them as well as we understand our own selves. Setting. The story is set in Kabul, Afghanistan, where Amir is born and then where he grows up. At the time, Afghanistan is striving towards westernization until the Taliban comes and they halt all of that. Then Amir moves with his father to America in California, where they set up their own life there, and Amir meets Soraya. This is an important setting because it's the first time that Amir and Baba go to America and they are able to see other cultures and they also grow closer. When Amir travels back to Afghanistan, after the Taliban has taken over, he's able to see the different side that he's never seen before in his hometown. Favorite quotes. My first favorite quote, his shoulders hunched and his cheeks sagged like they were too tired to cling to the bone underneath, is interesting because I really like how it shows or it gives me the image of how sagged that his cheeks were, that they were unable to cling to the bone underneath. The personification is interesting, and I like how just the picture that I get when I read that. The second one is more of a realistic quote and makes you really think about your life. When you read this quote, it may make you think twice about some things, just because if the world is always winning, then that's going to really affect your actions and how you think. Number 3 is about history and religion, not being able to be easily overcome. I like this quote because it really shows how deeply rooted people are in their religion and how history has affected, or how the history can even affect what's going on now. The fourth one, I like this quote because it shows Hassan's innocence. Throughout the story, Hassan is always innocent, always honest, always loyal, and it just shows how even if he is being loyal, that doesn't mean everyone else is. But he does think that way. And that also goes back to just how innocent he is and with the world and how almost naive he is and like unaware. Unique discoveries. I discovered that Afghanistan was taking steps toward being westernized during the 1950s and 1960s before the Taliban gained control. Also, I learned that Taliban was Pashto for students. Pashtuns are the predominant ethnic group in most the south and east of the country, which explains their social class and about how they control it over the Hazaras. Also, Afghanistan is a landlocked country, which comes into play when we think about how Amir and Baba had to travel to America. Final analysis. I enjoyed The Kite Runner and I liked it. I liked reading it. It was interesting and also it was something that I had to get myself through. How the book was written really made it easy for me to get into it and experience um, the characters and the setting and everything just as if I was in the book myself. It was emotional at times, but also it was touching at times. So even though I knew that it might not be a good ending or a good part about to happen, I was still willing to read and find out what was going to happen.